However, this pigment called melanin is part of your nervous system and your brain, and is basically the chemical key to life. It is called a civilizing chemical because it regulates all the rhythms in your body, when your eyebrows should grow, when you should become a man, puberty, when you should become a woman, what time your liver should be fed, what time your heart should be fed. It regulates all the rhythmicity of your system.
Now, when it comes to us understanding melanin, is there a difference between us of African descent and having melanin and others?
Well, you know, they break it down. The New York Academy of Sciences breaks it down into 4 classes. The one, when you see the term EU melanin, the EU prefix means good, well, efficient. That means that it is the black to brown material, amorphous, and is found in all throughout life, throughout the earth. And that means that it is a molecule that vibrates at a certain frequency and also vibrate those things or that material around it. So this is like the good melanin. You know, it takes all the light rays in and it utilizes them, changes it into a consciousness level, and it makes the body work. That's the first type. So that's the brown to black, and that one is found in the eyes, the skin, in melanomas, in the hair, in feathers, and so on, and it's derived biochemically from an amino acid called tyrosine. Right. Then there's a second type that we call pheomelanin, that means dusky, and that has proteins with sulfur, like such as dopamine or cis-dopa, and that's found in hair, fur, feathers, and it is a pheochrome or crystalline pheochrome. The Caucasians have that. The first type is in people of African origin or people that are heavily pigmented. In the second type, the pheomelanins, that's found in Caucasian, and that's a different chemistry than the eumelanin. The third type is called allomelanins, and that is brown to black, and it's nitrogen-free. It doesn't have any nitrogens in it, and it is found in the fungus of the soil and in dark soil. And the last one is the neuromelanin, and that's brain melanin. That's the one that I'm very highly interested in, and this is found all in the central nervous system of humans and vertebrates. And there are different substrates that it is associated with, such as the neurotransmitter called dopamine, and tyrosine, and epinephrine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and so forth.
Mexically, young or old, fat or skinny, have a problem being true to themselves. They have a problem looking in the mirror and looking directly into their own souls. The reason I sell 6 million records, the reason I can go to jail and come out without a scratch, the reason I can walk around, the reason I am who I am today is because I can look directly into my face and find my soul there. It's not sold, I didn't sell it, it's still within me, I still feel it, my heart is still connected to my body. So I could, any character, I'm gonna bring that intensity, that truth, that honesty to it, because I have to repay for that blessing from Black Jesus, from God. I have to pay for that by shining. If he give you the voltage and you waste it, that's the curse. He gave me the voltage, I'm gonna shine. It's not mine, it's from God. It's God. Not that it's so special that nobody got it, but all of our gifts and blessings and our strengths and our weaknesses come from God. Come from Black Jesus or whoever comes from within you. You know what I mean? So it's not really tricky. Everybody can do it if they just can go to that spot. I guess all the things that happened to me in my life allow me to go there.
Melatonin. It is released as soon as the sun goes down. It rises and reaches its peak around midnight, from midnight to 1 a.m. And then it begins to taper off, and it tapers off and stops right before sunrise. Now notice this, that during the dark hours, a hormone is released by a gland in the brain, and this gland in the brain This hormone is so powerful, it affects the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and many other organs throughout the body. So here we have one kind of hormone being released during daytime and during nighttime. What is the hormone that is released during the daytime that operates in concert with melatonin? I don't believe it's so much serotonin. I believe it is the hormone known as vitamin D. I have to give you all these names so we can play with them in just a minute. Just bear with me for a little while longer. Vitamin D. How is vitamin D made? Where is vitamin D?
It's made in all parts of your body, like blood cells are made in all parts of your body. It's primarily secreted by a gland called the pineal gland, which is in the center of your brain, in a water-filled space called the third ventricle. And inside of this ventricle, this water-filled space in your center of your brain, is the pineal gland. It's about the size of a pea, a green pea, and it's shaped like a pine cone, thus the name pineal gland. It, of course, it spins like the planets do. It has rotations, which were originally set in motion by hearing your father and smelling your mother. It causes a lateral and horizontal quiver reaction in the pineal gland that causes the child to be bonded to you in a special way that they can't be bonded to a parent that adopts them. This is the pineal gland. The problem with the pineal gland is most of the information is controlled by the military. And the military use that to invent what you call computer chips today. These computer chips crystallize as similar to the melanin. All we know is that if you want to create a drug, you have to destroy, speed up, or slow down melanin.
Maintain that George Washington Carver's ability to communicate with plants, when he said the plants speak to him, that he was really, because the pigment, the black pigment in the melanocyte has the greatest potential to pick up all energy, that actually the energy frequencies from the plant and Dr. George Washington Carver's very black skin, that he was tuning in and picking up this energy frequency information and translating it in terms of what plants could do, what they were capable of doing. So maybe I'll get the tapes and hear someone else's ideas on that topic. But I thought that in the short time that I'm speaking to you this evening, that I would address myself to what I consider to be very, very critical questions. That we can talk about melanin, but at this point in time, in terms of what we see happening in front of us via television and via the media, that the question that we must ask ourselves is that can we as individual black people protect our melanin?
Yes, it's very important for you to begin to understand that melanin is the complete composite of all forms of light, known and unknown to us. Now, I just want you to think about that for a minute, because when you are actually looking into the blackness, the bleakness, whether that's into your face, whether that's into a dark room, whether that's actually looking up at the sky, you are actually looking at all forms of life. Really, for the best thing I can describe to you, you are really looking into the face of the Creator. Now, if we want to go back as far as Egyptian times, I think one of the most controversial pharaohs, excuse me, Akhenaten or Akhenaten, depends on how you pronounce that, was known as the Pharaoh of the Sun. And the interpretations by Lubowitz and other hieroglyphic or Egyptian historians really were not able to truly translate why this particular pharaoh and his entire dynasty was quite focused on the sun and sun worshiping. It wasn't as though they were actually just worshiping an object that they happened to have chosen within their environment, but the understanding of recognizing that this was a greater emanation of oneself. That's what actualizing and honoring the sun was about. Recognizing that not only does the sun shine in the daytime, but also at nighttime. Because what you are seeing is a greater manifestation of more forms of light at night than in the day. Now, let's just look at that. I don't know how many of you had basic, how can I describe that, color identification in first, second, third grade, etc. They asked you to name 3 primary colors, and then you had to name their complementary colors, and they had you mix them together in paint, and you had to explain what you were seeing. How did you make yellow? How did you make blue? How did you get purple, brown, etc.? But the key here is that it's very important to understand that where there is no light or very little light reflects itself as being pale or white. And when there is intense color of a deep, deep intensity, it always manifests itself as being darkened or actually black. Now, what am I saying then when we're actually talking about this substance known as melanin? Let me just give you a little history here. There's so much information on this, and the more I review this, the more work I realize is available for me. I'm not going to bother us with a lot of the scientific data, because I want you to leave here today with a clear understanding of when you look at your face, when you're washing your skin, to your surprise, I think that you should begin to recognize that, again, on a written scientific basis, melanin began to be studied as early as 1658.
If we're talking about something that is the basis, it's actually one of the basics you hear all the time, carbon. We are carbon-based beings. Well, that's what melanin is, carbon. Forms of earth melanin is oil, crude oil. You see what I'm saying? It is the same thing that you hear of in the Bible of the anointed one. Or what it means, the anointed one, it means anointed by olive oil, but olives are both black and green.
That's right.
Well, Osiris is known as God of the perfect black, but he's also known as the green god. You see what I'm saying? Among Pan and other different, El Kedar is the green one in Islam. But they always talk about the green and the black. So these are ancient mythological mysteries, just alluding to this mysterious substance that is not only permeates everything, but it will be the outcome of everything also.
There was a flurry of concern in the scientific circles regarding the discovery of the sun's influence on the decay of radioactive elements on Earth. It was found that some kind of strange emissions from the sun are causing matter to mutate on Earth. Its influence on the decay rates of elements like carbon-14 has been especially worrisome and unexpected. Carbon, as previously stated, is the basic building block of life, as we know it. And carbon-12 is the most abundant form of carbon, accounting for about 99% of all known forms of carbon. It is the isotope of carbon that consists of 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 6 neutrons. 6, 6, 6. Does that sound familiar? After oxygen, the second most abundant element in the human body is carbon-12. On cremation, the body returns to its carbon-12 state. This is probably what the writer of the Revelation meant when he said that 666 was the number of man, or number of the beast. It is the number of carbon-12, which is the basis of man's physical body, which ties him to the physical universe. This is especially significant when we understand what transmutation awaits this carbon-12, which will bestow man such superhuman powers that will make every technological advancement till date completely redundant. Carbon-7 is the hitherto undiscovered isotope of carbon, which has 6 electrons, 6 protons and only 1 neutron. It is the material equivalent of the Kundalini system as well as Metatron's cube. Like iron has the ability of sustaining a magnetic field around it, Carbon-7 has the uncanny ability to carry hyperdimensional fields, such as fields of thought, around it. Thus it can amplify thought and other hyperdimensional fields, just as the iron and copper in a transformer can amplify magnetic fields. Naturally, it is formed in the brains of spiritual adepts when they have out-of-body experiences or perform other supernatural phenomena, such as bilocation.
It's interesting that this gentleman by the name of Lecher, a French gentleman, found it was very interesting to note that in certain animals, whether they're frogs or they were cockroaches, etc., that they had this substance known as what they call a basic pigment that allowed them to have particular colors. In 1737, there was a gentleman by the name of Albinus who recognized and was able to identify that this particular pigment had specific characteristics and was interested in finding out where it originated from. Now, it was interesting that his name being spelled A-L-B-I-N-U-S, Albinus, had been coined also as the precursor to a particular disease where this pigment was not present, or albinism. Now, in the United States, one of the foremost gentlemen in pigmentation research, his name is known as John Mitchell, and he's located at Harvard University. And there is a whole center there at Harvard University and has been there for the last 40 years that does nothing but research on pigmentation and all of its aspects. In 1987, there was a journal that scientists have put together known as the Journal of Pigment Cell Research that has been in publication and that is produced every month on cells of pigment. How many of you are subscribers? How many of you have any idea that there is a medical journal that's put out every month on your pigment? Do you have any idea what's in it? Fine. It's interesting that out of all the cells studied in the body, the most important and the most common cell studied is the red blood cell. Next to that, or second, is the nerve cell or the neuron, and then thirdly is the melanocyte. Now, I think it's very interesting that at least on the news and in the newspaper, we are told about what blood cells do to some capacity and about different neurologic diseases, multiple sclerosis, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, etc. But now, I haven't heard in these general information centers that the third most intense studied cell is the melanocyte. Have you? But scientifically, though, when the money is looked at as to what parts of the body the most money and research is spent on, it's the red blood cell first, the nerve cell, and then it's melanin.
Can we collectively protect melanin on this planet? Because I think that a very significant dialogue is going on with us. And if we're not looking broadly, we will miss the communication from the white side of the chessboard. I say that the most important analogy that we can use to center ourselves in reality of today's world is to understand that we are at a gigantic global chessboard. The white side of the chessboard is playing white supremacy for white genetic survival. And it is waging war on the black side of the chessboard where all people of color are placed. The black people being the most significant people representing the black side of the chessboard because we have the greatest quantity of melanin. that can challenge white genetic survival in the perception of the people, the tiny minority of people on this planet who classify themselves as white. But that white side of the chessboard has been dialoguing with us for the past several thousand years, but let's just bring it up to present time and the last several months. I maintain that that white side of the chessboard is saying to us, I can kill 2 million of you at a time if I want. And I hope everybody looked at the pictures of the people in Rwanda and saw the high concentration of melanin in the people in Rwanda. That melanin is not protected.
They hold a conference about you, and none of us are ever invited. We have it every 3 years. They're always studying and updating information on melanin. That's how you control behaviors. That's what you call the nucleus of the cell. Every cell has a brain, and the brain of the cells in your body is melanin. So to study melanin is to study biology. But they never mention the word melanin in a biology class because they don't want to get you aware of what's really going on. Then we study melanin particles called electrons and protons and solitons and neutrons. We start calling that chemi after the word chemet. And you study melanin particles and we call that chemistry. But they're never going to tell you they're studying melanin because you may get wise to the game and know that the only thing there is to study is you on this planet. All devices are caused by the ability of melanin to create different kind of energy force fields, as people like to say today. It causes energy to spin to the left and to the right, which we call DL and L-phenylalanine and L-glutamine. We give it the names based on spinning. We do that a lot in chemistry. We name things after how it spins, or we name things after the color. Riboflavins, rutins, phytoflavonoids. We give things names by color. We give things names by numbers. Vitamin B1, vitamin B2, vitamin B3. And we give things numbers by Latin names. Omega, beta, omega-3, those are Latin names. Then we give substances. All we do is rename the same thing, but switch the way in which we name it. One time we name it by letters, the next time we name it by colors, the next time we name it by numbers, and then you sit there totally behooved at what's going on, and all we're doing is talk about you, black. But the idea is to keep you totally confused and to some way manipulate your melanin. As I mentioned before, a lot of the research is done by the military because they need to know this. This is how you cause people to be dysfunctional. This is how you cause people to be functional. It's by your ability to manipulate and control melanin. Now, there's some black people who don't think they're black because they're not as black as someone from Somalia or something. But that man is just as black as that man. It's the melanin inside of his body that we measure, not the skin. It's the melanin inside of his body that we measure. Because you can meet some coconuts that are just as white as some, and you know what I'm saying. So we measure the melanin inside of the body, not the skin melanin, because this can change. Melanin is a very adaptive kind of chemical. That's why the people that can endure the most cold weather in the world are Eskimos, and they are colored people. They are not white. Because the melanin has adaptive ability, what you call evolution. We don't want you to know that all it is we're talking about is adaptation, which is caused by melanin. So we say evolution. We're naming the behavior of melanin, so you won't know that that's what we're talking about. You say free radicals, antioxidants, and give it all these names. All we're talking about is how melanin reacts and acts on a chemical.
So we as a people, as a melanated people, need to do things to continue to rebuild our melanin chemistry and to maintain it. You do it through eating raw foods. Foods have pigments. So you eat raw foods, then the body's cells and tissues and organs then have what it needs to create new melanin, because I think it's a turnover, a continuous kind of process. And I do know, and I've seen this when we open the brain and make the slices, that deep in the brain there are black centers. And some people have predicted that there are at least 12 centers in the brain that is black. Some are more than others. I mentioned in the midbrain, the substantia nigra is that area where it's more dense. And another part called the locus coeruleus also is a part where it's more dense. So if that melanin is destroyed, or if the neurons containing it are destroyed, and the dopamine that they, as a neurotransmitter that they release, if those are out of balance and reduced, then you don't have a system of maintaining skeletal muscle control, and you start to tremble, and we call that Parkinson's. So Parkinson's is either a reduction in the number of neurons in that black area, a reduction in the blackness that's there, and in the reduction of the dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter.
The messages and information from the brain to the rest of the body pass through the human neck. So if you're caught in an ice age, you've got to grow enough hair to shield the neck, to insulate the neck. Otherwise, you're gonna die. Same thing with the nostrils. When you're in the sun of Africa, you need these big nostrils we have because you gotta cool the brain down. But if you're in Europe and all that ice, you don't wanna cool the brain down. So you need a smaller nostril bridge so you can warm the air up that's coming in. These simple physical anthropological realities.
The Greeks lost their history, all of it. Okay, the Greeks lost all their history. You know who had their history? The Arabs had the Greeks' history. The reason we know Greek history is because of Islam. Because of the Arabs revered Greek history. And what the Greeks were doing and all their philosophies, they wrote it all down. Then Greece lost their history through wars and this and that and the other. And they regained their history because of Arabic texts.
But we're talking about it because that's the only thing in your body worth studying. That's the only way the chemical acts. That's the only way a vitamin or a mineral acts. It's called melanin. That's what harmonizes them together. That's why we study elements. Elements in science are called oxygen, nitrogen, ammonia, calcium, magnesium, potassium, mercury. We call those elements. And these elements are unified and dispersed by something called melanin. We have three major behaviors that a substance such as melanin or yourself, because you're a collection of elements, oxygen, calcium, magnesium. So it's three major behaviors you can have. You can either join together in harmony, which we call synthesis, synchronized harmony. You can join together in harmony, which we call synthesis. Or you can join together and decompose each other, which we call decomposition. What are those two behaviors I just named? Can anybody repeat that? I don't hear you. They're listening. And the third behavior, of course, is displacement. Which means if I don't like you and I come in the room, you stay in that place and I'm going to stay in this place. That's displacement. Those are the three behaviors that an element can have. And those behaviors are given birth by something called melanin. Melanin comes in various forms. It comes in a gas form, a liquid form, and a solid form. The only form we're talking about in European chemistry is the solid form, because we only deal with things we can measure and weigh, which we call objective measurements. We deal with objects. Subjective measurements we don't deal with, because that's something you gotta feel. You gotta feel this is all right. You gotta feel that this person is okay. That's a melanin thing, because the more melanin you have, the more psychic you are. The more melanin you have, the more spiritual you are. The more melanin you have, the more intelligent you are. The more melanin you have, the more human you are. That's why we gauge human beings by that. It's a humanizing chemical. The people with the least amount of melanin are the Europeans, the Caucasians, the white people, the melanin challenged people. They have the least amount by their definition. Now let's just take this melanin journey. I told you it's carried by the sperm, and it unites with the egg, and it causes two different spins to occur. We're just going to follow this melanin through its whole journey in life to find out how our journey is going to be dictated. But we don't want to tell you we're following melanin particles. We're going to call it DNA, which is a string of melanin wrapped around some sugar called ribose. See, we're not going to tell you, we're never going to tell you we're studying melanin. So we have these two strings of melanin, like you had banisters on us walking up a step. You see, one banister is melanin and the other banister is melanin. They're united by a protein, which you call your genetic code. And the protein is the stairs that uniting both sides together. And we call that whole string with the steps DNA. And this DNA is dancing. It has a rhythmicity to it. It's synchronizing the steps. Now, melanin is the center of all of this. But we have two ways to alter this melanin. We can alter this melanin by nature or by nurture. If I alter it by nature, you say that's innate talent. If I alter it by nurture, you say, oh, he learned that from his mother, his grandpa. That's nurturing, where you get it from your environment. Things that are not made by the environment is called nature. So we can alter your thought process by nature or by nurture. And melanin is going to adapt. It's going to adapt to a hostile environment. It's going to adapt to an environment that's pleasant. Or the body don't want to be in that place. It's going to deplace. Now then, melanin is adapting to the environment by nature or by nurture. By nature, some people say the nature of a person is to fight to be alive. Fight and flight. That's man. But the nature is also to tend and befriend. That's female. The problem with science, the problem with you, the problem with the planet, the problem with biology, the problem with history, the problem with religion, the problem with insanity, the problem with your brain is that everything is named after a man. Your brain is named after a man called Oedipus, a little boy who wanted to have sex with his mother so he killed his father. Oh yes, your brain is named after a man. History is named after men. Tutankhamun, Ramesses, Napoleon. History is men. Biology is men. Newton. All these Aristotle, Paracelsus. Everything is male orientated, so you're only getting one side of the whole story. Yeah, you're not only getting his story, you're getting a homeless. Never mind, I don't go home. You're getting a lot of flavor there. So the way we're looking at each other and the way we look at chemistry is kind of like, it's sort of like that. So we're not really seeing the picture of what's going on. You have to look at it from both your male and female components of you, your nature and your nurture, your fight and flight, tend and befriend, your acid and your alkaline, your positive and your negative. You have to look at it from both perspectives. And what's putting these both perspectives together in synchronicity and harmony is melanin. Now, if I'm looking at this whole process of how things are getting along together, the process of life, because we're looking at life when we look at melanin. We're looking at how life starts when we look at melanin. We're looking at how life unfolds itself. It unfolds itself by breathing out and breathing in. By day and night, we're looking at the unfoldment of these two elements and what brings them together in harmony is melanin. Because it synchronizes, it civilizes them so they can act together. Now, with this process, you're looking at things differently. An example of that would be a tiger chasing deer. And the tiger's chasing the deer and killing the deer, and you looking at it and say, what a horrible animal that tiger is. He's just killing them damn deers. Now, if you are one of those conscious black people, you say, stop in this whole scenario and say, I wonder where the tiger came from. All the herd, I wonder where white people came from. No, you're going to keep running. You ain't got time for that kind of foolishness. I wonder where white people came from. No. Did the deer stop and say, I wonder where the tiger came from? No. They just keep running. Offering her a drink, I just destroyed her eggs. Are you still following me? Yeah. This is how lethal it is to deal with a single thing. You're going back 3 generations here. What I'm saying is you are the eggs of a woman, not the woman herself. What I'm saying is these children are eggs. You looking at them as something messed up. I'm saying this, they were eggs first, before they came a person second. And I got to the egg and didn't tell you that. I said, oh, just have a drink. The alcohol won't bother you. You're just 5 months pregnant. Don't worry about it. We'll sit down and drink a glass of wine. That alcohol went to the eggs because the eggs have no immune system. Yeah. 3 generations already. Down, somebody offer you a drink, you just tell them, brother, you trying to mess up my eggs. Yeah, give this alcohol to your sperm, brother, you just messed up your sperm. It's because we're not looking at the whole totality of the subject because we have a degree of understanding. When you get educated by the Europeans, no matter what the subject, you have a degree of understanding. They never tell you, I'm going to give you a holistic degree. They say, I'm going to give you a degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD degree. I'm not going to give you the whole subject. So all you have is a degree of understanding. You come out to school thinking you got the whole understanding. You don't have it. You just have a degree of understanding. 2 degrees, 3 degrees, they ain't tell you how many. So when we have an education about chemistry or biology, all we have is a degree of understanding. So it's kind of hard to talk to people, get in awe of their little piece of understanding about whatever the subject is. No, you don't have the holistic understanding of the subject. How many times did they say mention melanin? Melanin? What's that? I buy watermelon, but I don't buy the melanin. They're not even mentioning it in the classroom. But yet that's what they're studying. So we're going to be more mindful of the effect of chemicals on our eggs and on our sperm. You can't sit up all night drinking beer, giving your sperm beer. You can't do that. It's not going to grow properly any more than you feeding beer to a plant or soda pop to a plant. It's not going to grow properly. But you're nourishing your sperm and your egg the same way. How can the tree grow? How can the sperm? After a while you say, I don't need no book to understand this because I've never seen a rat use a book to understand what to eat. I've never seen that. You have to understand this with your melanin. You say, this feels right. I may not understand what he's saying, but this feels right. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about this book. I'm talking about your spirit. I'm talking about that melanin in you. It's trying to talk to the melanin in me so we can be mellow.